And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
For Thursday morning, we've got a couple of bands of IFR out over the Bering Sea here. One from the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, down southeastward across the Pribilofs, and then kind of banking up here along the north shores of the eastern Aleutians into the Alaska Peninsula. A little bit of a break here to the in between this band and the next one here, with more moisture and low flying conditions coming into the western Bering Sea and Aleutians. Otherwise, another band here with that front and storm moving into the Gulf of Alaska, mostly off the coast, but coming up into at least western Prince William Sound and the east side of the Kenai Peninsula, and some IFR up over the Copper River Basin, and then lower conditions all along the Alaska Range, better to the northwest and north there in the interior, and then back down, get up here to the Brooks Range, marginal VFR with IFR now for the Arctic coast. And the southeast coast, conditions lowering with IFR starting the day there for the northern areas, and then for the afternoon, that comes southward a little bit there toward Petersburg and possibly Wrangell. Otherwise, marginal VFR for the southeast coast and the North Gulf Coast, with some IFR in over the mountains here, the southern Copper River Basin. Marginal VFR north of the Alaska Range there, almost up toward Eagle. Otherwise, not too bad in the central interior. On down into northeast Bristol Bay, some VFR. Also for Kodiak Island, Cook Inlet, and the Susitna Valley. And then the Brooks Range, North Slope, marginal VFR, some IFR along the Arctic coast. Out to the west, big area of IFR here. Up to about the Pribilof Islands, west-southwestward across Adak and Atka, and then showing some improvement out towards Shimianatu, but the west coast here, all marginal. For the afternoon, that area of IFR shifting eastward here to Nunivak Island and into across the southeast Bering Sea, the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians westward there, out to at least Kiska Island. IFR along the Alaska Range, as well as the Talkeetnas. And over here on the east side, Copper River Basin on up to just south of Eagle, some IFR. Now a lot of IFR for the North Slope there from the Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast. And the southeast coast, IFR with some marginal VFR to the west and southwest there showing up, especially toward Prince of Wales Island. Kodiak Island still good with VFR. For the afternoon, Friday, VFR for the North Gulf Coast, here down into Kodiak Island. Really improving here across southern Alaska, actually, south central Alaska here, VFR in the afternoon. Just some areas of marginal VFR along the Alaska Range and northward in the interior there. The IFR mainly along portions of the eastern Arctic coast up there, with marginal VFR into the Brooks Range. A lot of IFR here out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians to the Alaska Peninsula. Now for the passes, Anatuvik tomorrow and Adigan, another marginal VFR day for both those passes. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR at times. Looks like it'll be rainy, or it'll be IFR for rainy pass at some point in the day tomorrow. And for windy, marginal VFR. Same forecast for Isabel, Bintesta, marginal VFR. Tanita, occasional IFR. And for Portage, same forecast, IFR there, as well as Chilkoot and White. Freezing levels here, 4,000 feet over the eastern Bering Sea, 6,000 feet over the interior, 8 to 10,000 feet for the southeast coast, and roughly about 8,000 feet there along the central and western Aleutians. Icing, weakening front here coming eastward in the Bering Sea, brings some isolated moderate rime icing here with it from St. Matthew Island right on down, dragging eastward across the Adak-Atka area. And then with the front here into the Gulf of Alaska and up along the North Gulf Coast, we've got some couple areas of considerable moderate rime icing here over the eastern North Gulf Coast, Yakutat in toward Elfin Cove, and possibly the Kenai Peninsula. Jet stream, low pressure here across southern Alaska into the Gulf, the other center back over the southern Kuskokwim Valley. Southwest winds at about 65 knots into the Panhandle. Strongest jet core here, though, along and south of the area now, just catching the central Aleutians at 110 knots. And then for 9,000 feet, westerly flow here coming across the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians, about 35 to 40 knots, becoming a little more northwesterly for Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula. And then that coming around the bottom of this trough here in the Gulf of Alaska, good southwest flow, 40 to 45 knots into the southeast coast. And at 3,000 feet, band of 40-knot winds for the Panhandle there, coming around easterlies at about 40 knots right along the North Gulf Coast into Prince William Sound. 25 to 35-knot northwesterlies from Bristol Bay and, across Kodiak Island there in the Aleutian Range. And then an increase in the winds here, maybe to 30 knots out of the west there with that weakening front pushing eastward here across the southern Bering Sea to the central Aleutians. Turbulence, look for considerable moderate turbulence here for Kodiak Island, up to the Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, Shelikof Strait, the lee side of the Aleutian Range here, and also over the inside waters of the southeast coast.